evening, everybody. My name is Susan Eastland, and I'm on the adult programming team at Cary Library. Thank you so much for joining me tonight while I tell you all about my trip that I took just recently in May. And we're going to be discussing how to plan a American Southwest car camping trip. So yeah, we're just gonna get into it. I am gonna have the Q&A pulled up, so please, if you have any questions, feel free to send them when you have them. I'm gonna try to keep an eye on it so that, if something comes up that you have a direct question about, I can answer it when it comes up. But you can also send them and I'll go over things at the end. I'm going to go over all of the crucial information first, and then at the end of the slideshow, I have just a whole bunch of pictures, and I can talk, more details if anyone wants to hear them. So we're going to get the important stuff out of the way first. So if you need to, log off at the end, that's completely fine. This is also going to be recorded and go up on our YouTube channel. So if you need to tap off at any point, you can always watch it later. So thank you again for joining, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So a little overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about choosing when the best time to go is. I'm going to talk about why I went when I went, finding the best vehicle for your goals, packing the right gear, and creating your itinerary. So this is choosing which parks you want to visit, where you want to visit, choosing which campsites you'd like to go to, and deciding on your excursion and hikes. And then we're going to talk about planning out your meals, and then also just the general day-to-day experience of car camping. So setting up, closing down camp, hygiene, and then what was very important to us, which was getting our laundry done. So when should you go? I decided to go at the end of May. I've put a little calendar here. So the red dates towards the bottom are where I went, are when I went. I had read that the shoulder seasons, so, not super dead and when the weather is really tough and also not super busy in the summer, was April to May and September to October. The peak summer months have more crowds and the campsites fill up really, really quick. Supposedly late summer is monsoon season. And then in the winter, some areas of the parks might close, and you'd also need winter gear, which would just be extra stuff that you'd have to either bring or buy there. And so we decided to go in late May, which worked out really well for us. I think some parks were busy, other parks were very quiet. And yeah, I have no complaints for when we went, so I would highly recommend going in late May. And we did go to Saguaro National Park, and the peak cacti blooms are at the end of May and in early June. So we went May 11th. So as you can see by my picture here, they were starting to bloom. It was very beautiful, but I think if you went a little bit later, they would have been full bloom. But so May would be my recommendation because that's when I went. So finding the right vehicle. These were some questions that I was considering when I was trying to choose which vehicle we wanted to take. I was hesitant to do an actual camper van because the thought of dealing with like a potable water, like gray water tank intimidated me. And also just like charging the vehicle, having to like plug into places electrically, intimidated me since I'm not a camper. So I wanted to take a car. So when we were looking up um, camper Jeeps or camper like trucks. Some things I was thinking about were, do they have a mileage charge or a daily mileage limit? A lot of the rentals had like, say like a 1,200 mile limit or maybe like a 200 mile a day top off. So I wanted something that didn't charge me for the mile, that didn't have a limit. Um, I also found that insurance coverage for the vehicles was very pricey, in my opinion, as a 27-year-old who tries to kind of go on budget trips. So sometimes if the vehicle was going to be, I don't know, let's say 1,200 or something, 1,800 to rent for the 2 weeks, the insurance coverage was like $500 plus $800, like just kind of what seemed un um just not doable for me. So I was looking just for cheaper options. What fuel does it use? This wasn't something that I was thinking about originally, but the car that we ended up using was a diesel engine, which is not something that I've ever driven before. We didn't run into too many problems with it, but definitely in some of the more remote places that we went to, we sometimes pulled into a gas station and they didn't have diesel, so we had to keep driving. And there were also some times when we let the gas get a little low, and so that kind of became an issue too. But and then, do you want running water? Actually, one of the camper Jeeps that I was looking at when I was putting together this list of sites for y'all did have like a little pull-out sink, which I was surprised. None of the camper cars that I had seen before that had like sinks. And do you want a toilet? Our camper Jeep did not have running water or a toilet. We made it work, but these are things to think about for if you want to go car camping. What are the things that you're not willing to, um, you know, what are the things that you're really going to want every single day when you're out there? So some helpful websites that I used. The company that we went with was Arizona Camper Van. The gentleman who runs it was really helpful when there were problems. He, was very quick to answer. Some other Actually, and there weren't really any problems, but he was just very helpful when we were planning the trip and things like that. Some other websites that have camper van rentals are Outdoorsy and Escape Camper Vans and Indie Campers. Um, I am going to send out a recap email later, and that will have all the links on it, so you guys don't have to worry about writing this down or anything. Um, all right, so this was our choice. This is one of the few pictures in the presentation that is not mine. This is from this company's website. But so our little Jeep was named Tonto. Fix my camera a little bit. So it came with all the stuff that's listed here. It had said on the website that it would come with like 4 blankets. So, like we were expecting 4 blankets. It only ended up coming with 2 blankets. Um, because when I went, I have family in the Phoenix area, which was our base where we flew into. So we ended up taking sleeping bags from them. But definitely, and I kind of was banking on the fact that we had family. So if the car didn't have X, Y, or Z, I could get it from the family. Um, if you guys are traveling out there and you don't have anyone local and you're completely relying on yourselves and the rental, I would definitely reach out to the rental and just confirm. I think because there was only 2 of us, they only included 2 blankets. I could have checked with them ahead of time and made sure there was 4, but I didn't. But so it came with sleeping sheets and stuff to go in the sleeping platform on top. It came with 2 camp chairs, 2 camp tables, cookware, pans, plates, silverware. Came with a 2 burner camp stove, which was super easy to use, 2 cans of propane, collapsible shovel, a solar shower, which was essentially just a tank on the side of the Jeep and a hose. A refrigerator that plugs into the Jeep, so you never have to worry about it. It was pretty big. It has the wraparound awning that you see in the picture, which we never ended up using, and then a power bank. So every night, or every morning, we would plug the power bank into the car, and then every night we would grab the power bank, take it up to the sleeping platform with us, and charge any of our devices. Tonto had unlimited miles, 4x4 drive, and the diesel engine. So, what should you pack? So, when I was doing my research, it looked like in May, with all the places that we were going, the weather would be very different. It looked like sometimes it could get as cold as the 30s, and then also, in Phoenix, it can get as warm as the, 90s and 100s. So, for hiking, I would suggest definitely you need hiking shoes. Both my roommate and I took boots. I think trail runners are also a great option. Now that we're getting more into hiking, I'll probably be investing in some trail runners soon. Trail runners are essentially a mix between hiking boots and regular sneakers. They have like the durability of hiking boots, but they end below your ankle, so they're less constrictive. Um, you're gonna need lots of layering items. So we wore a lot of tank tops, t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, like quarter zips, hoodie zip ups. Um, we wore leggings, hiking pants, or just athletic pants, shorts. You're gonna want a rain jacket. It never rained on us, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't. So definitely bring one just in case. We had one. You want a sweatshirt or a down jacket, and then a bandana. The bandana really came in use on cold mornings when we were hiking, just to have something around your neck. Also, when you're in the desert and it was very windy, we needed it. I have a picture of this gentleman here in a comfy, which is a brand of this like down insulated giant sweatshirt. We knew from looking at the weather before we went that it was going to get very cold at night, and we wanted to be warm. So we each have one of these comfies, and we took it with us. We wore it on the plane to Phoenix. Um, and, I think we probably got some weird looks coming out of the Phoenix airport with our giant, very warm comfies. But it was probably one of the best things that we packed for the trip because so many nights were very, very cold, and adding into the fact that like we didn't have a ton of extra blankets. We didn't have like cold weather sleeping bags. These really probably saved our lives. So definitely recommend bringing like a big comfy thing that will keep you warm. And then some things that you'll need for the campsite, you're gonna want regular just walking shoes, or comfortable casual shoes. This is for like if you're grocery shopping or if you choose to go into a museum or something. You're gonna want camp shoes that are waterproof. So this is an example of a sandal. My roommate had something like this. I had a more Tiva sandal type thing. Um, I would suggest the slip-on because when you're climbing into up to your tent at night, my roommate could just slip off her sandals and I had to like unvelcro my Velcro sandals. But you're gonna want something waterproof, for when you go in the public showers. And so those would be kind of your three footwear. So your hiking shoes, your casual shoes, and your camp shoes. I think you could definitely make it work with just your hiking shoes and your camp shoes. I don't think you need the casual shoe, but we had space, so we took them. And then the comfy outfit. So something just super loose and casual that's going to feel good on your body after hiking all day. Ended up wearing this pair of overalls a lot. That kept me comfy and cool and also sometimes warm. And then you're going to want your PJs, obviously. I think our warmest night ended up being probably like 72 or 73, and our coldest night got down to 28 or 26. So, again, varying degrees of weather when you're going throughout the Southwest, and you're going to want to be prepared for anything. And then a swimsuit. We really only used this at Lake Powell, but we went swimming there. It was nice. And then obviously you're going to want to pack lots of underwear and socks. You're going to get like sweaty when you're hiking, and then you're not going to have a chance to shower before going to bed if you chose the campsites that we chose. So you're just going to want plenty of options so that you always have something clean and dry to put on. And then this is just some pictures of us. I wanted to include, kind of all the different outfits that we were wearing. So you can see we have like the tanks and the shorts on. You can see in some of them we have like our long sleeve kind of sweatshirts on with the bandana with another like long sleeve underneath. Like there were definitely a lot of times when I would do my tank top and then a long sleeve and then a zip up and then also maybe my sweatshirt. Once you're hiking, you're going to take all that stuff off because you're going to warm up. but it was definitely cold and super, super, super windy in a lot of places. And then I don't think maybe I put this on my list, but also obviously you're going to want a hat. Um, yeah. All right. So what do you want to pack when it comes to gear? So something that went in my day pack every day, so the pack that I took hiking, we brought our water bladders that we have. Um, it depending on the hike length, we would either take just the water bladder or we would take the water bladder and a water bottle. You're going to want a first aid kit. There's a list somewhere of like 10 things you should take on every hike. So I tried to kind of base it off that. We had a headlamp that we never used, at least for hiking. We had one of those like emergency blankets, also never used it, but good to have. Sunscreen we used constantly. Self-defense options. We were two young women traveling by ourselves. So, I had a camp knife from my family that lived in Phoenix that I borrowed from them. And then we also stopped and got some pepper spray. And Aaron had the pepper spray most times. I had the knife. We tucked them into bed with us every night just in case we'd need them. So something to think about if you're traveling. And then whatever snacks I had for the day. And then I took a digital camera with me. So I had my camera and extra batteries in the camera pack. And then some things you'll need at the campsite. We tried to read every day. That was like our cool down time. So we brought Kindles with us. And then you're going to want some Ziploc bags or trash bags. We used our Ziplocs for sandwiches that we made every day. If you like make dinner one night, then you have anything extra, it's just a good thing to have. For trash bags, we ended up using just plastic shopping bags that we, would go to the grocery store, we'd buy something, or a gift shop, we'd buy something, and then we just left the little plastic bag tied onto the back of a headrest as kind of like a daily trash. Um, and then you're gonna have your sleeping bags. We borrowed some sleeping pads. You can see kind of at the bottom right of this picture. Here's one of the sleeping pads rolled up. We never ended up using these to sleep on because the camper tent that we have had like a light foam mattress, but the sleeping pads came in very handy when it was cold. I had the idea to put them along the walls of the tent to kind of insulate us. And definitely there was like a super cold night that we didn't do that. And then the next super cold night we tried that, and it definitely stayed much warmer in the tent. So if you have a way of maybe bringing something like that or just checking to see if whoever you're renting from has something like that, it was definitely very helpful to us. And then you're going to need your phone and your camera chargers. And then we brought an extra tent. Definitely not necessary. We did not use it once. Again, my family had one, and so we decided to take it. Our thought process was since a lot of the campsites that we used were on free camping land, you don't have a reserved spot. So my thought was if we had an extra tent, we could bring that, set it up to kind of claim our spot just in case we wanted to leave and come back. But we just never really ended up doing that. We would always find our campsite at the end of the day, and then we were just there for the day. And then this other picture is us wearing our hiking boots onto the airplane because they're too big to go in a pack. Okay, so creating your itinerary. The screenshot to the right here is our itinerary, pretty much. Google tops off at 10 things when you're trying to map something out. So there are some things that aren't here, but that's pretty much the roads that we took. It was around 1,500 miles. So when you're thinking about where you want to go, you want to think, what are the things you definitely want to see? How many days do you want to spend in each place? How many hours do you want to spend in the car? How much time do you want to have at your campsite in the evenings? Do the parks that you're going to or the tours that you're going to go on have timed entry? And then when is the best time of day for that excursion or tour that you're doing? So this is an overview of the trip that we did. So I have the calendar here, and then I have kind of what we did that day, and then also where we stayed. So we flew into Phoenix on the 9th. We then went to Saguaro with my family. On the 11th, we spent some time with family and we packed up all of our stuff. On the 12th, which was Monday, we picked up the car and we went grocery shopping. And then we drove up to Sedona, which is like, I think, 2 hours from Phoenix. We got a quick hike in and then we went to our campsite for the night. The next day was one of our longest driving days. We went, I'll come over back to the map so that y'all can see. So Sedona is down here towards the bottom where I'm circling, and we drove all the way over to the Petrified Forest National Park, spent some time there, and then we drove all the way up to Monument Valley. You can see that's a very big chunk. None of the other days we drove that much, but we got it done. We stayed the night in Monument Valley. The next morning, we did the Monument Valley Drive, and we drove through the Moki Dugway. That night, we stayed in Mesa Verde, and I have a couple of these symbols. So this green C is an actual campsite, and then the L over here to the right is when we did laundry. So we stayed at the campground in Mesa Verde National Park, which was really great. They have like a pancake breakfast the next day. So it was very nice to not have to cook our breakfast for once. But so on the 15th, we did our Mesa Verde tour. It was supposed to be on the 14th, but another thing to think about when you're doing this trip is that Arizona does not do daylight savings. So when we were driving places, like we didn't realize that the time change might be changing. So when we were going from Monument Valley to Mesa Verde, and we went by the Moki Dugway for fun. It took us too long, and we were supposed to have like a 2 or 3 p.m. tour for the cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde that day, and we didn't get there in time because of the time change. So luckily, there was a tour the next morning that we could book instead, and thank God that ended up working out. But just something to keep in mind, there is some time change intricacies of being in the Southwest. So we did our cliff dwelling tour in the morning, and then we drove to Canyonlands that night. We stayed in the Needles district of Canyonlands, which is to the south. Canyonlands is a pretty big park, and I'm just gonna pop back to the map to show you guys. So Canyonlands is this whole area just west of the road that we took. So a lot of people go to the Island in the Sky district of Canyonlands, which is up here by Moab, and people, do Arches and Canyonlands at the same time. The Needles district, oops, I lost my cursor. There we go. The Needles district is down here to the south and only accessible this way. Um, it's a little bit less drivable. It's more kind of you have to get out there and hike as opposed to a lot of the national parks have, quick, easy pull-offs where you can snap a picture and not really have to leave your car. Um, so we stayed 2 nights in the Needles district, which we really enjoyed. Keep in mind if you happen to go there, there's a Needles campground that is a privately owned campground right outside of the park. And then there's also a campground in the national park, which is called like the Needles District Campground. So I thought I had booked the one that was in the park. Apparently, I booked the one that was outside of the park. We ended up loving the privately owned one that we stayed at. The couple that owns it was excellent, and it was just so lovely to stay at. So I very much recommend that. But just try to be extra careful when you're camping, when you're booking campsites, because names can be deceiving. But so we stayed 2 nights in Canyonlands, which was really nice because that let us get a long hike in. And then from Canyonlands, we went to first Dead Horse Point State Park, which is up by Moab. And then we spent some time in Arches. Since that was about halfway through our trip, we decided to do our laundry there. We had planned to do that. So we just found like a public laundromat. We did our laundry and we got dinner out that night, which was very nice to not have to cook for ourselves. Um, One of the tough things with traveling and doing laundry is like we air dry all of our athletic clothing. So we had like a car full of just like athletic clothing hanging from different things as we were drying the rest of our clothing, which just made it, um, you know, an adventure. But so we camped that night at Utah Raptor State Park, which is just north of Arches. Um, Happy to talk more about it at the end when I talk a bit more about camping. But it was a really great, brand new campground. I don't think people knew that it was open yet, so it was pretty much completely empty. It was only 15 or 20 bucks to stay there, which kind of saved us because none of the other campgrounds had availability that night. So that was really lovely. The next day we went to Capitol Reef. And then we stayed in the Dixie National Forest. Then we continued on to Bryce Canyon. I think the Dixie National Forest continues there. Both nights we were in forest land. And then the next night or next day we were at Zion. We camped near Zion. And then we did a long hike at Zion the next day, camped in a different spot near Zion. And then we went back down to Arizona, where we were camping at Lake Powell, which was another official campground. They had a lot of amenities that were helpful. And we did our Antelope Canyon tour and we saw like Horseshoe Bend. Um, Lake Powell, I've never seen anything like it. So that was very cool. Swam there. And then our final full day, we drove down to the Grand Canyon and then we stayed in the National Forest, the Kaibab National Forest, which is just south of the Grand Canyon that night. And then on the 24th, we finished our drive back down to Phoenix and we returned the car. So picking the right campsite. So this is similar to picking the vehicle that you're going to choose. You have to think about what are the things that you can live without and what are the things you cannot live without. We decided that we were going to do the wild camping, which is camping on like the Bureau of Land Management lands, um, which is free, just like clearings, maybe a fire pit off the side of the road. So the app that we would use every single day was called Campendium. Right here is a screenshot of what the map looks like. This is, I just screenshotted Moab. So all of these green circles are the free camps that I mentioned. And then like the blue and the red are like actual kind of RV campgrounds. It also has like the little poop emoji for like dumping, your waste from RVs. And then there's also, I think there aren't any on the map because I'm probably zoomed out too much, but it'll also have water emojis for, like potable water fill-ups. Um, but so think about, do you want a bathroom every night? Do you want shower access? Do you want on-site staff? Do you want laundry access? Do you want a general store? Do you want Wi-Fi or cell service? We tried to kind of schedule like which places would like have access to showers, since many nights we were just free camping, so it was just us in the car and the woods. So we were just, going to the bathroom outside, doing that. Um, and then we had also scheduled out, that we were going to be in Moab halfway through to do our laundry. Um, Wi-Fi and cell service is a big thing to think about. I had read that the cell service there would be spotty, so we were prepared for it. It was very helpful when the couple of actual campsites that we stayed at had Wi-Fi. For example, the Needles district of Canyonlands doesn't have any cell service. And I think our campsite had Wi-Fi, but only like by the general store, not actually by the campsites. So we were kind of off grid for 2 days and would have to stop at the visitor center, which is a great place to get Wi-Fi of the national parks. We'd have to pop into the visitor center every day to kind of check in with our loved ones and, prove that we are still alive and get some texts off and whatever. Um, but so some of the campgrounds that we stayed at were national parks campgrounds. So that was, I guess, just Mesa Verde. Um, but yeah, so that's a great resource to check out. Campendium, again, we used every single day. I had done a lot of research on YouTube and just on the web about like favorite free camping spots in Sedona. So I then used Google Maps to put down pins of where we thought we might camp for the night. I didn't end up using the Google Maps as much as I ended up using Campendium. Campendium is super easy to see people's reviews, so I could, find a spot nearby, and if people complained that it was near an airport, so the sound of planes was going all night, I'm like, okay, maybe not that one. If I look at another one and see a review from last week and it's like, hardly anyone was here, great spot, highly recommend it, I'd say, okay, let's go check this one out. And then off we would go. So, highly recommend the Campendium app. It was very helpful to us. So, excursions. You have to think about where you're going, what are they known for, what do you want to do when you're there. So when we went to Mesa Verde, you have to get a guided tour to go through the cliff dwellings. So we booked there. When we went to Bryce Canyon, we ended up doing horseback rides, which is in the park. Um, I think there's just one company that runs it at the park, so it's easy enough to kind of figure out. I think they have like a 2 hour, then maybe also a 3 hour. Um, Super easy. They kind of ask you, your horseback riding experience. They match you up with a horse. Um, and yeah, it was very cool. Definitely a little bit scary if you're afraid of heights. This would maybe be something that you want to think more about because you're going down a little trail kind of on the side, of some steep areas on a horse. So you have to be confident in your ability on an animal and also just, comfortable being kind of on the side of a cliff. Um, and then Antelope Canyon, which is on Navajo land, you need a guided tour to go through. Also, something to think about that I mentioned earlier is look up the best time of the day for certain excursions. So, for example, I had got a new camera to bring on this trip. I was really excited to take pictures, and I looked up best times of the day to do the Antelope Canyon tours. There's also an upper Antelope Canyon and a lower Antelope Canyon that are two different places. It's the same canyon wash. There's like a river, and when the river overflows because of the rains, the water washes through this canyon slot and is what makes the beautiful rainbow lines on the walls and that we see in the pictures. I have pictures later on, if you don't know what I'm talking about. But um, so there are certain times of day that is better to get good photography in Antelope Canyon. We ended up doing, I think, the lower canyon, and it said, I don't know, early afternoon is best for the light. So that's what we booked. All right, and then I'm just going to quickly go over what worked for us when it came to meals. This is a picture of our first grocery adventure. Um, so every morning we had protein oatmeal and instant coffee. For lunch every day, we made a PB&J. And then for dinners, we pretty much just had like a protein, a vegetable, and a carb every night. So we mostly did chicken sausage. I figured this was best because the chicken sausage is already cooked. And we would just reheat it on the pan. We also did beans, and then typically for our veggies, we did like broccoli, zucchini, or asparagus. And then typically we did pasta or rice. This is also all kind of stuff that's easy enough to cook in one pan or like two pans. Our rental came with a two-burner stove, which was helpful some nights. I don't think a two-burner stove is necessary. One pan meals are definitely doable. And then snacks, which were very big for us. It's really important to eat when you're hiking. So we had protein bars, jerky sticks, apples, nuts, and then sweeter stuff, saltier stuff. So Oreos, chip salsa, hummus, peppers, and carrots. Obviously, what works for you is what will work for you, but this is what worked for us for 2 weeks. And then this is just a little bit about how it went setting up camp for the night. So we would arrive at the campsite anywhere between 3 to 6 p.m. This is also one of the things that I mentioned earlier that you want to think about when I was mentioning to someone that I was getting a new camera and I was excited. They were like, oh, best time of day for taking pictures is in the morning or at night, like the sunrise hour, the sunset hour. Um, this would require still being at the park at sunset, since if you're car camping, your campsite is your car. We prioritized every single night just getting to our campsite, getting comfortable, cooling off, like putting our comfy clothes on and having our reading time. We spent, a good amount of time in the car and hiking and just walking around every day. So prioritizing getting to our campsite early, setting our tent up early so that we could just chill for the evening was really important to us. So typically, each of us would kind of have a role. This is a picture of me and my roommate. Um, very, very thankful that she kind of took the tent role to herself. So she would set it up and break it down every day while I cooked dinner or cooked breakfast. It is doable as one person to kind of pull the tent down that we had. It had some ties that were could be difficult, which I helped her with, but it was very nice to kind of divide and conquer every day. We would also prep our lunch sandwiches so that we didn't have to do it for tomorrow. And we would do our dishes after eating dinner and get our breakfast ready, get like the bottle of water ready, the pot ready for boiling the bottle of water, get our little protein oatmeal packs ready, the instant coffee ready. Because when you've kind of had a bad night of sleeping and it's super cold and you wake up in the morning, the last thing you want to do is pull out your camp stove and get to cooking, but it's just what you had to do. So getting as prepared as possible the night before was super crucial, to try to make mornings as quick as possible. So then would read, and then we would get ready for bed around 8 to 9. Like brush our teeth, get whatever bathroom things done in the wild, or if we were at our campsite, at an actual shower or bathroom, and then eventually go to bed. Um, Someone did just ask somewhere. Where did I see it pop up? Someone just asked, what had been your camping experience prior to this trip? Really, essentially nothing. I went camping a couple times with my family when I was young, like maybe 8, 10. Really nothing since then. I also don't have a lot of hiking experience. So, hiking every day, and we did like a couple of 8-mile hikes was super new to me. But this was another reason why I was looking for a car camping vehicle that had every single thing that we need. My roommate and I are a great team. We've lived together for a couple years. Obviously, who you do it with is also a super big part of the journey. Um, we have like complete trust in each other. We're very good at, cohabitating together, dividing and conquering on chores and stuff, um, supporting each other when you're feeling pissed off or tired, um, all that stuff. So, yeah, pretty much no camping experience before this 2-week trip. My uncle in Phoenix that we were staying with that first weekend was joking that we'd like be back to see them on Wednesday, that we wouldn't like last 2 days, which I don't think he actually meant, but I was like, who knows? Maybe that could happen since we had never camped before. But we made it. So camp in the morning. Um, this is one of the few days, this was our second day at Canyonlands, where we actually got to sit out and enjoy our breakfast for once. Like every other day, our breakfast was on the go in the car. But since we were spending a second day at Canyonlands, we gave ourselves like an hour to kind of have breakfast, read our books in the morning before our long hike, which was really nice. But so in the morning, we would wake up between 5:30 and 6, get the water boiling. This was another reason why we did instant oatmeal and instant coffee because the only thing we'd have to do is boil the water and then pour it into the oatmeal, pour it into the coffee. So like minimal dishes, minimal mess. Break down the tent, get dressed, and then we try to get on the road by 6:30 or 7. Excuse me. Typically our day was set up that we would get up and we would do our driving to the next park in the morning. So we would get there between, like 8, 9, 10. And then we could get some hikes done in like the late morning, early afternoon, which is not the best time for the sun. But it's just what our schedule was in the daily. And then again, we'd try to get to our campsite sometime late afternoon, early evening so that we could set up and wind down. Um, so yeah, so our bulk of our driving to the next park was always first thing in the morning. Okay, and then a final thing before I take more questions if you have them and go through pictures. Um, I heard about this app called Journey Blog before we went. I kind of dismissed it when I first heard about it, but then my roommate and I thought about it more. And we had a lot of different groups of people, her family, my family, our friends, her friends, my friends, coworkers, whoever, that wanted to be kept up to date on our trip. And it would be a lot to update all these different groups, right? So Journey Blog is an app that you can download for free. And it allows you to do journal postings that connect really well with your phone. So you can upload pictures, you can tag locations. It connects with like the weather app, so you can post what the weather was like. Um, and we just actually kind of fell in love with using it. It's really easy. Like if you have the pictures in your phone and you open up the app and like go to a new post, it'll automatically grab like the group of pictures that you took at 3 p.m. and the group of pictures that you took at 6 p.m. into two different posts. Um, and so, here is the example of what our little blog looks like. We ended up making 62 entries. We just kind of got really into it. And, instead of just like one bulk entry for a day, we did, little separate entries. So, like, this is the sun setting at Lake Powell. Um, and then it's also cool. It, tags location wise where you've been. So, this map on the right is the screenshot of all of the places we've been. Um, yeah, so that's kind of my little overview of car camping. I think we're at the end here. Yeah. Happily we'll take more questions. Again, I am going to send a recap email. So that will include links that I had in here. I'm going to include a packing list, my itinerary. And then I also figured I would throw in, we kept track of all the trails that we hiked at the different parks. So I figured I would throw that in too in case anyone was interested. Um, I do have a question here. Did you use your regular cell phone or did you need a satellite phone because of your remote locations? We just used our regular cell phones. I did have like my location shared with a couple family members, just in case, anything kind of went wrong. Um, Also, something important to do for our longer hikes, we would always tell somebody what time it was, what hike we were taking, and when we were expecting to come back, just in case anything happened. Um, but yeah, so definitely every day because we knew that we could never trust that there would be cell service at our camp for the night. We would always text somebody, saying we're going to be in this area. We should be at this park tomorrow. We'll text you when we're there tomorrow. Um, and yeah, we just tried to keep in touch with loved ones at home since Wi-Fi and cell service were spotty. Um, Another question I've just got is, did you have any interesting wildlife encounters at your campsites? Um, I don't think so. There were definitely some like loose dogs at some campsites, or just when we were driving around, which then led us to some extra grocery runs because we would give the dogs, some chicken sausage and peanut butter, and water, of course. One of our last nights, which was at Kaibab National Forest in just south of the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Um, we went to bed early and we set an alarm to get up in the middle of the night to stargaze because, stargazing it's like darkest or whatever in the middle of the night. Um, so when our alarms went off at midnight, we were like in the middle of the forest and I heard some interesting animal noises. I don't know what they were. I've tried to look up like Arizona forest animals and their noises. Um, I can't figure out what it was, but it was just like some concerning noises that then had me choosing not to get out of our tent in the middle of the night to stargaze. Um, but yeah, just another thing about the free campsites. It's helpful to look at Campendium to kind of look at how remote campsites are going to be. Some of the free campsites that we used, there were like tons of people around. It wasn't super private. And then some of them were very, very remote, and you'd only see one or two other people. It was always important to us to try to find a space where at least like one or two other groups were, just because we didn't want to be by ourselves. Like one campsite we chose, which was outside Capitol Reef. It was like in the middle of Dixie National Forest. All of the other campsites near there were full, and then for some reason, the forest, it was like the National Forest campsite that we chose, was like completely empty. And all these cars kept driving by on the main road, and we were like, "Come in, come join us." And then finally a car did come in, and so it was helpful to feel like we weren't the only ones in the forest that were camping there. But um, yeah, definitely feel out, like if you arrive at a campsite and, something doesn't feel right, like move along to the next one. Especially as young women that were traveling by themselves, we were definitely just following our gut and going where it felt safe. So, um, if you have any other questions, please feel free to submit them. If everyone else hanging out is just waiting for pictures, I'm happy to go through some pictures from the journey. Um, so our first stop was Saguaro. Obviously, just stunning cacti and kind of rolling hills. I had never seen, anything like all these tall cacti just existing. Some very funky shapes. And then our next stop was Sedona. So the hike we did there was called Devil's Bridge. Um, and yeah, it was very, very cool. It was very cool getting to know kind of the hiking community a bit more. For example, at Devil's Bridge, people wait their turns to go out and take pictures on this one spot. And everyone is super friendly and just, oh, you go take your picture and then you can take mine for me. And everyone's just waiting patiently, and it's just very cool. This was a sunset at our campsite that night. And then Oak Creek Vista was just a stop off point from Sedona on the way to the Petrified National Forest. But it was just absolutely gorgeous. And then I don't know why some of these are lower resolution. Sorry about that. But then we went to the Petrified Forest National Park. You can see on the left here, there's like a walking path. So kind of part way up, there's a little tiny human just walking along the walking path. This was our campsite near Monument Valley. So this was just like a locally owned campsite. I had seen that it was there. They didn't take online reservations or anything. You just show up and claim a site, and then the owner walks around at dusk and collects cash from you. He was super knowledgeable, really helpful. Definitely, it was called Sleeping Bear campsite. Definitely recommend that. And it's just outside Monument Valley, so you can then get into Monument Valley early in the morning. And then this is along the Monument Valley Scenic Drive, um, which the entry person had said, oh, expect to spend like 2 hours. I kind of scoffed, thinking that we would get through it quicker, but I think we were driving for like 3 hours. So definitely leave yourself lots of time to drive through Monument Valley because it's just stunning and you're going to keep pulling off and taking pictures. And they also have stalls set up with people selling their goods and stuff. So you're going to want to have time to go ahead and look at that if you're interested. So this was the Moki Dugway, um, which is just like a random thing that I stumbled across that I wanted to check out. It's not really on the way to anything, so it's definitely a bit of a side trip. But this is just a dirt road that curves up the side of this like cliff face. My roommate was not super happy with me that I added this to the itinerary. I think neither of us really fully understood what it would be like, but um, yeah, it's just this long, winding road, and people are going both up it and down it, even though it's really only one lane. So you have to kind of like hope that there's space to pull off if you see a car coming towards you. But so we drove up it, and then we didn't want to drive back down it, which is why we then missed our Mesa Verde tour that day, because we added this side stop. But it was very cool. I don't regret it. The views obviously are insane. We came across wild horses, so this is just one that was off the side of the road. And then Mesa Verde, this is we did the Cliff Palace tour, which is the tour with a little bit more climbing. So someone's asked, did you find most people were camping as you were, or were they living the nomadic life? I would say most people that we talked to were doing trips like we were. It was kind of cool. We would like see people at one spot, and then like a day or two later, we'd see them at the next spot, hours away. Some people, like we met a group of people on our Mesa Verde tour that we then saw at Capitol Reef a couple days later. Um, our Mesa Verde tour, our cliff dwelling tour guide had told us about like a burrito place and then also a smoothie place in Moab. So we went to the smoothie place. And then the group that we ran into again later on, who shared the tour with us, we were like, oh, did you go to the smoothie place in Moab? And they were like, yeah, did you go to the burrito place? And we were like, no, we didn't get to the burrito place. And they're like, oh my God, it was so good. We went twice. So definitely, traveling like this is the best time to get out of your shell and talk with other people and get to know, like the local best spots that you don't want to miss. And it was like seeing like long lost family if you like did a tour with somebody and then happened to run into them at like another national park multiple hours away. Just the fact that like you run into them twice, it's kind of crazy. This is still in Mesa Verde, just like beautiful mountains in the background. And then a couple places, it's just interesting reading about like the forest fires that happen, and the things that they do to prepare for forest fires and to try to control damage and things like that. Um, this was one of the petroglyph rocks. and Bears Ears National Monument, which is on the way to the Needles District of Canyonlands. And this is also Bears Ears. There's like one road between the main road and Canyonlands, and so this is just like all this gorgeous scenery that you're driving through. And then this was Canyonlands. So gorgeous. This was my favorite park, in case anyone wanted to know. Canyonlands was definitely my favorite. I would love to spend more time there. So these rock formations to the bottom right are where the district gets its name. These needle-like rocks that jut up. And yeah, it's just gorgeous. You would like walk through a break in the rocks and then just come to like another clearing, like giant fields and then more rocks. And it was just very cool. And then we headed north to the Moab area. Arches has timed entry, so we did ours for like 11 a.m. We had some time to kill before that. So Dead Horse Park is kind of between Moab and the northern district, the Island in the Sky district of Canyonlands, which we did not have time to go to. But we did pop down to Dead Horse State Park, which has this beautiful lookout point that you can drive out to. So highly recommend that. We didn't get to do any hiking there, but it was definitely worth stopping by just to get these views. And then we went to Arches. Arches was actually my least favorite park. Not sure why. It was very, very crowded, which we kind of weren't expecting somehow for it to be that crowded. All of the places that we went before this were significantly less crowded. Um, And yeah, I don't know. It's gorgeous, obviously, but it just was not my favorite. And then Capitol Reef was our next stop. This is, I think, a park that not a lot of people go to. I think when people think of national parks in Utah, they're thinking of Bryce and Zion and Arches. Um, but Capitol Reef was beautiful and also surprisingly crowded, I think. We were surprised. Um, but yeah, just gorgeous. I got very into taking pictures where you could see the tiny people walking. So at this bottom um, right corner picture, you can see these two people at the top of this cliff that were like across a valley from us, or yeah. Um, And then Bryce Canyon, I don't have a ton of pictures here because my memory card for my camera glitched a bit. I still have yet to try to dive into that more because I'm afraid the rest of the pictures are gone. But these are a couple that I have. And then this is just pictures from our campsite in Dixie National Forest that night. They have the Ponderosa Pines, which I have a close-up of the bark in another picture. But these forest campsites were just like so gorgeous. And then we went to Zion. Zion was the one park where we had to deal, like Zion is very much shut down other than for the shuttles. So it's a bit hard to find parking in the park. We did find parking both days in the park, which I think we were lucky to find. Um, and then the only way to get around to the different hiking points are to take the shuttle. Um, So we did apply Angel's Landing, which is one of the most popular hikes there. There's like a lottery system so we did apply for it both days and didn't get it. So we ended up doing a different long hike our second day there that actually the point that it ends at ends up looking down onto Angel's Landing, which is this picture to the right. Angel's, I don't think you can see it, but Angel's Landing is down here somewhere. And then we stopped at Horseshoe Bend, which is in the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, which is down in Arizona, I believe. So this is when we were heading south to Lake Powell. And this is in Page, which is like Horseshoe Bend and Lake Powell and Antelope Canyon are all right in the same area and definitely doable in just a day. There's Lake Powell. It was so crazy seeing, and obviously the pictures are edited a bit. I didn't edit them, but I have a Fujifilm camera and so I can set it to kind of like a pre-established filter kind of thing. Um, so while the pictures are edited, it actually really did look so insanely blue compared to the orange surrounding lands. It was very crazy. I've just never seen anything quite like it. This was Lake Powell in the evening from our campsite there. And then this was the sunset there that night. And then these are some pictures from Antelope Canyon. So this is also on Navajo land. So you cannot get into Antelope Canyon unless you have tickets for the guided tours. And the tour guides here are excellent. They like know exactly what spots to get pictures um, that are best for pictures. They know how to like do tricks with the iPhones, that the lighting is right. So you're definitely, getting your money's worth and learning a lot about the land and the people that live there. And then our final stop was the Grand Canyon. This is just a random dog that we saw and was sitting so nicely. And so I asked the owner if I could take a picture of their dog. And we did do the Bright Angel, I think it's called, trail, which is the one that goes down to the bottom of the canyon. We only got like 2 miles down, maybe a mile and a half down. And then we went back up because, again, we were hiking in the middle of the day and it was very hot. And then this is my last picture. Just again, I mentioned the ponderosa pine, and so that's the bark, and our beautiful campsite from the last night, which is where I heard the questionable sounds. And I think, yeah, that is it. So I'll stay on if anyone has any other questions, but I think I answered all the ones that people submitted. Yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in. Obviously, this is just a very broad overview of car camping, but hopefully, I at least gave you some things to think about. If you've been thinking about wanting to do a trip like this, um, it's very doable to, if you have, a well prepared car like we did, to get out there and just do the damn thing. Um, Definitely go for it. If anyone has any questions about traveling for this sort of trip, please feel free to email me. You can just respond to your registration emails and I'll get it. Happy to answer any questions or give any more details for any parts that I talked about. Um, Thank you everyone so much for tuning in. Again, this will be on our YouTube channel, so you can always go back and watch it in case you missed anything. Um, and thank you for tuning in and have a good night.